My name is Richard Sherman. I'm a retired wildlife biologist. I worked for 10 years for the Oglala Sioux tribe, and I set up their fish and wildlife system, the hunting and fishing code and so forth. And during that 10 years, I have also been working on a stewardship model, indigenous stewardship model, which the tribe eventually adopted. And also Parks and Recreation, the organization that I belonged to at that time. So now that I'm retired, I'm still continuing with that work, but now what I'm doing is starting a nonprofit organization called the Rattling Leaf Tree, and, which refers to the cottonwood tree, which is central to the Lakota life, I guess. And I'll continue probably working with students on various projects. I've worked with field students from Colorado State University and several other organizations or universities throughout from the East Coast on to South Dakota, and on mostly ethnobotanical projects, and, but not necessarily just that. So, and the way I got into working with field students is that I started working with a professor from Colorado State University, and so they would actually stay with me during the summer months, and so I met an awful lot of students, and it really helps me to rehash all of that stuff too. It keeps it foremost in my mind, so I really enjoyed doing it. Various studies, population studies, studies about natural resources, just a number of different things that pertain to the Lakota people over a period of time, probably well from about 1990 on into 2000, whatever. I can't remember when I left here for Colorado, but so, and another thing I just did recently was I taught a ethnobotanic course from the tribal college, and this past fall. And I'll probably continue to do that, but one of the things I also do is I take tourists on field excursions, and we look at plants that are important to the Plains tribes by way of food, medicine, and so forth. I don't know that I have favorites. There's so many of them, and it was only, let's see, probably around the 19 or 1890s when we still lived off the land completely before we were put on reservations. So, all of our food came from the land, all of our medicine came from the land at that time. And so, but even the cottonwood tree that I just mentioned, the rattling leaf tree, the Lakota term for that is wagachung, which means rattling leaf tree, and it's central to the Sundance, sacred Sundance ceremonies. It's a medicine. It's of the willow family, and it contains ingredients that can be used for pain abatement. You make tea out of the bark and so forth. It can be used to feed horses during the winter months when nothing else is available. Cut the branches and feed the horses, and they usually come out of winter in good shape.
Wow.
So it's interesting to know, because if your snow gets deep, then that's all that's available. But it's time consuming, but you keep your horses alive, I guess. But as I was mentioning earlier, just driving from here into Rapid City, which is only 6 miles away or so, I can see medicinal plants right in the ditch as I'm driving along, and one of these is a wild licorice, and that's used for a number of things, just like echinacea is kind of a panacea for a number of ills. And so just there's whatever ails you, I think you can find out there something that will cure it.
Mm-hmm.
If you get poison ivy rash, there's a plant that grows at the same time that you can smear on the rash, and it'll help to alleviate the itching and make the rash go away. So one of the more recent ones was that we worked with high school students from the reservation, and then we took them out on excursion out into one of the buffalo pastures and looked at some of these traditional plants that are used by the tribe, and they came away with some pretty good knowledge. I thought that when they asked to talk about the plants later on, they seem to retain that stuff. And I've noticed the same thing with the younger kids, the grade school kids. They, I always wonder how much they're really retaining. And then we'd drive a little further in the country, and they'd say, "Oh, there's that plant right there," And so it would surprise me pleasantly, I guess. So it's good. A lot of these things are things that are being lost over time, or with the death of each elder, you're losing knowledge, and so it's good to bring that stuff back. So what remains is kind of vestigial, I guess. So it's good to bring all of that old knowledge back, whatever is left. I'm not a medicine man by any stretch of the imagination, and some of the medicines that people use require several different plants mixed together, and so I can go out and find these plants, but as far as mixing them to treat somebody, unless it's a simple thing like maybe chokecherry bark tea made for treating diarrhea, or plants that you use to boil in a tea to alleviate headaches or arthritis or whatever, I can do that. That's very direct stuff. Mm-hmm. So when I actually live on the reservation, I probably use, I don't know, anywhere between 10 and 20 different plants all the time. And, so I guess the first thing would be to prepare them for culture shock if they're not used to being among people who live differently. And it can be shocking, really, if you go in somebody's home and they're far different from what you're accustomed to, and so I guess they need to be prepared before even coming out, and they have to have the driving need, I guess, to really get out and do this stuff and be willing to help people. And most of the students that I've been associated with have been interested in helping other people. So I think that's a good thing, a good starting point, I guess. Have the desire to do it, and to be among people who are different than what you're used to.